It's time to do business again. Updates from the world of business. That's what we have prepared for you on Business Incorporated. And here are the stories, some of the stories that we have for you. In South Africa, VAT hike is causing some protests. And just like Nigeria, Libya is recording revenue decline in oil. Digital transformation is the focus in Senegal. Going digital is their project. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Let's do business. Starting from the global space, oil prices rebound by 1% to end the week as 1% as at the close of the week last week, and then investors now are weighing on the diminishing prospect of a quick end to the Ukraine war that could bring back more Russian energy supplies to the Western market. So looking at the numbers, we see, well, a pleasant one for Brent as we see it's back up to $70.58 after it gained 1%. WTI is also up $67.18 a barrel. And we know, of course, that the trade tariff is a major one for the markets and investors in that area. And of course, Russia, China, and the United States are in the middle of it. Still in the global space, or before we head back to the global space, the Petroleum Products Retail Outlet Owners Association of Nigeria, Petron, they congratulate the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA, on their recent milestone of licensing 83 refineries with a combined total refining capacity of 1.12 million barrels. Well, the breakdown of the licenses, which include 8 refineries with licenses to operate, 30 refineries with licenses to construct, 45 refineries with licenses to establish. And the national president of Petron, Dr. Billy Gillies-Harry, is emphasizing the importance of making crude oil available for local refineries. He states that if these refineries must remain in business, adequate provision must be made for sufficient volume of crude to be set aside for them. Petron commends the NMDPRA for its efforts in promoting local refining and reducing dependence on imported petroleum products. They say this is a significant move for the nation. We head back to the global space now. Gold prices continued at record rally on Tuesday, driven by concerns over U.S. President Donald Trump's criticism of Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. This has dampened risk sentiment and drove investors towards the safe haven. So we see it initially hit 3,500, but we see it's retreated a bit now. $3,472.49. That's for spot gold. U.S. gold is $3,482.48. In the last couple of hours, it's up 1.7%. Spot silver is on the flip side, lost almost 0.5%, $32.57. Platinum is green, 0.3% up, $964.78, while palladium gained more than 1%. $939.50 per ounce. More investors are seeking a hedge in the metals, and so we see new highs being recorded in the price of gold. Now, here in Nigeria, the total volume of currency circulating outside the banking system surged by 26.7% year-on-year to 4.6 trillion naira in March. This is according to the latest money and credit statistics from the central bank. The amount, which represents 91.9% of the 5 trillion naira total currency in circulation, signals continued dependence on cash by Nigerians, despite the CBN's sustained effort to promote a cashless economy. At the same time, the report shows broad money supply in the country went up 24% to 114.22 trillion naira last month, despite CBN's aggressive monetary tightening, which raised the cash reserve ratio higher to 50%. The report also mentions that credits to private sector increased slightly by 0.03% to 76.27 trillion naira. That's in March. That's up from 76.25 trillion naira recorded in February. However, the March figure is lower than the 77.39 trillion naira that was recorded in January this year. And following this, Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company is saying that the central bank needs to tighten the country's fiscal space in order to control the rising growth in money supply. This, according to Mr. Rouhani, is something that has to be done to deal with the fiscal deficits.
The thing is that Nigeria is not listed as one of the vulnerable countries. As a matter of fact, Nigeria is listed as one of the countries that can withstand this shock. So what we need to do is to come back domestically and ensure that two things happen. One, we control money supply growth by tightening a little bit. Two, that we do something about our oil production so that there are no leakages at the wellhead. So if you do that, then your fiscal deficit as a percentage of GDP is not going to be as high as anticipated. Also, I will not be surprised if we have to have a supplementary budget.
Still, during business morning earlier today, the issue of rising debt, special drawing rights, concessionary lending, and climate change funding should take the focal point of discussion by Nigeria's delegation at the IMF World Bank spring meetings. This, according to developmental economist Professor Kenife, who was also on Business Morning earlier today. He explains that the finance minister and the CBN governor who are currently attending the meetings need to continue engaging the Bretton Woods institutions on other major economic issues as the country is currently facing difficult times, despite the recommendations given on the bold reforms carried out by the federal government.
Those agenda of continuing to massage the ego of the big boys, foreign investors, that has to continue. And then, of course, there are also African agenda, and Nigeria is a major part of that African agenda, that are looking at the debt situation. 19 African countries are melting down under the yoke of extreme debt. Then also you have the issue of people asking for IMF on SDR, special drawing rights. So to be able to use, bring out special drawing rights and then channel it to development finance and financial institutions for concessionary kind of lending. We remember when it was used during the COVID, it was actually to help people purchase the vaccines and then also pay their debts and restructure their debts, all of that kind of stuff. So that's where they are looking to funnel that, if they agree to do that. And I think they need to, because we are yet to see the full impact of the global trade war. Their next meeting may well take another 6 months. By that time, it probably would have been very late. Then you've got also the issues around climate change, that we're only getting 5.5% of funding available in climate change when we are, as a continent, losing $7 to $15 billion every year on that. And we take the greatest hit from that. So all of these agendas, Nigeria are part of those. So we'll continue to talk.
Well, still from the spring meetings, the second IMF IOS CEO conference on market-based finance in Washington, D.C. is drawing the attention of global financial regulators, policymakers, and industry leaders who are discussing the rapidly evolving landscape of the capital market. The conference focuses on two transformative trends: the integration of artificial intelligence in financial markets and accelerating shift from traditional mutual funds to exchange-traded funds, the ETFs. Key sessions at the meeting examine how artificial intelligence is reshaping market dynamics, from trading strategies to risk management, raising both opportunities and regulatory challenges. Notable speakers, which include acting U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission Chair Mark Ueda and IMF Financial Counselor Tobias Adrian, engage in discussions about safeguarding market integrity and technological innovation. The conference underscores the need for international cooperation to ensure that market-based finance continues to support economic growth while maintaining resilience in the face of new risks. We come back home to Nigeria. The governor of Anambra State, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, has hosted members of the EU and UK-based Anambra diaspora at a town hall meeting in London. The engagement served as a platform for the governor to present his administration's 3-year scorecard and outline future priorities. He's also made a passionate appeal to the diaspora community to partner the government in sustaining the state's ongoing development momentum.
Value for money. And we have refused to borrow a kobo from any bank since this last year. It is deliberate. You borrow when I always say we have only 2 criteria to borrow. It has to be concessional. Number 2, it has to be project finance. We'll be able to show you how that loan will be repaid when we borrow. And I will tell you, that's why Anambra is the only state that turned down an ongoing World Bank loan that I met. Last year, they distributed 438 billion to 35 states. Anambra was the only state that did not get it. Why? I had 2 problems with it. When I came in, I told the country director of the World Bank, so I understand a little thing about this finance and money and so on. But from what I could understand, it was the most expensive fund in the world. You get this money in dollar terms, you convert it to me, and the official exchange rate then 406 naira to the dollar. When I knew that as day follows night, that exchange rate was going to be over 1,000 naira. And so now you give it to me. If I took it, I would have taken it at 406 or 500 and something. And now the exchange rate is about 1,600. When you start repaying, probably it will be 2,000. You know that the effective interest rate on that fund will be more than 300%. I said I was better off to borrow from a commercial bank.
Now, back home here, on April 15, President Bola Tinubu declared a national emergency on food security. I think that's the second one. This time he did it in proxy, urging expanded irrigation infrastructure and participatory water resource management nationwide. He did this while opening the 6th African Regional Conference on Irrigation and Drainage in Abuja. So food security or food insecurity is not news in Nigeria. State of emergency has been declared even before now, and I don't know if we've seen a lot coming out of that. But let's speak now from the perspective of a small-scale agro-business, and we're doing that with Yusuf Harun. He is an agri-business entrepreneur right here in the studio. Hi, Yusuf. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure, Ini. Good afternoon.
So we keep talking about food insecurity. We hear pronouncements, state of emergency, a lot of conversations going on. Would you say we're making improvements? I know you operate in your space, but as a nation, would you say we are making improvements in dealing with food insecurity?
Thank you very much, Ini, for this important question. Now, this question can be answered in 2 ways. We are making improvements relatively, but there is still much more we can do to improve better. Now, the problem or challenge many of us have is that we depend on the government completely or solely to provide food or agro-business. I would also want to recommend that we don't look only at the government, even though it's their primary responsibility. But we as individuals, we can go into small-scale agro-business, and it is very profitable. I, as an example, I'm a medical doctor, but I'm also going into farming, and I can assure you that it is very, very profitable. So I think it is something which we are making improvements because the government is also trying to support entrepreneurs and independent people that want to go into agriculture. But we should also take the bull by the horn and see what we can do to improve ourselves, especially in small-scale agro-business.
So are you saying that I should have a farm behind my house now, if I have the space? So when I'm done with work, then I head to the farm.
Yeah, the First Lady said this years ago or months ago, and many people made jest of it and was like, well, she was saying, oh, try and plant vegetables. But the reality is that if we plant vegetables in our house or at the backyard, we can make lots of profit. For example, spinach, or what we call ewedu. If we plant lots of it at the back, within few months, it's going to grow, or tomato. And I have done this practically. I did this here in Nigeria. Even when I was abroad, when I was in the US, I planted tomatoes, I planted pepper, even where the weather wasn't conducive, but during the summer, and it grew, and I was able to take it.
But the reality of that is a lot of people live in houses that you have tiles and all of that. When I was growing up, we used to have a bit of, gardens, and even in school, you have a bit of garden. But these days, you hardly have such space. So how do I do that?
I agree with you. Industrialization has really taken a lot, and also many people are looking into IT and other forms of business or investment. But this is now where the government has to play a role. I also remember when we were young, the governments were allocating hectares of land, acres of land to individuals that wanted to do farming. I'll give an example as my dad. My dad was given acres of land along Ekpe to plant agriculture. And he said he doesn't need it. He returned the lands back to the government. And not only him as an exception, many people also didn't want to go into farming. And that is why we are over-dependent. Our importation of goods, of products, is at an alarming rate. We import virtually everything. There was a time there was an accusation or allegation, even in the Senate, that Nigerians were importing pizza. They were importing toothpicks. We can cut woods in the forest and make toothpicks, and every wood we cut or every tree we cut.
I think we've gone past that. We have to be made in Nigeria.
Absolutely.
Now.
And
I don't think it's...
Yes, then it was. So that is also to answer your question of, are we improving? So that is absolutely a good improvement.
Okay, but the conversation now seems to be, is it about access to land, but it's actually the level of productivity. So I've spoken to a couple of farmers, and we want to go beyond the cutlass and hoe level. So while you are talking about backyard, that sounds like a hoe and cutlass level. But what people who are into farming now are asking is for the machineries.
Mechanized farming.
Exactly, because that's how you improve productivity.
So this is where the government has to come in. And the good news is that the president of AF, the African Development Bank, is a Nigerian. So we can make use of this opportunity. And I think he should give more loans to young entrepreneurs, to farmers, to people who want to go into
Dr. Akinwumi Adesina is very passionate about youth and all that, but
Absolutely.
We also have to know that AFDB is not a Nigerian thing. It's an African thing.
It's an African
so we
thing.
don't put him in a tight corner.
Yeah, but he also I understand that he has supported many Nigerians that have also gone into agriculture. Aside from that, also the government, each governors have to. For example, I believe the governor of Nasarawa State once said that he's interested in young farmers in his state that want to go into agro-business or agriculture. So I believe that we can do it. Even in Lagos State, in Ogun State, I have lands in Ogun State where I have devoted to planting of crops, maize crops in particular, and millets, together with plantains and cassava. Some of them are long-term agro-investment business, like coconuts. Coconut is a good business. That's where we make the oil, which we use in lubricating our skin. We also have palm oil. Also, it could take 5 to 7 years. Rubber is another good investment. It takes 5 to 7 years. So we can also do a long-term agro-business. We can do a short-term. The short-term, like pepper, tomatoes, maize, crops. Then we are now going into the animal investments or animal agro-business. We are talking about birds, such as poultry. Broilers can take only 6 to 8 weeks to develop, and you can sell them in the market. So imagine somebody who just has few hundreds of naira or thousands of naira. The person can buy chicks of broilers, vaccinate them, feed them. The feeding does not have to be extraordinary. You can get worms. You can get houseflies that lay maggots. It sounds funny, but you can get things like that, feed them with it. They grow in 6 to 8 weeks. They are big. You vaccinate them, and you sell them. And
so
now
this
they're
is a
sold for
profitable business,
yes. During Easter, someone called me, come and buy chicken, 20,000 naira, broiler, big one, just 6 weeks old. It's already grown big. So it's a profitable business. Now Christmas comes again. Turkey is another good investment. And I'm doing it. I'm talking from practical experience, even as a medical doctor, but I've also gone into farming. So I buy turkey, the chicks, like the broilers, turkey also, they all look alike when they are young. I even have the video of them. And after a few months, these turkeys, they become big, and I'm planning to sell them in December or during Thanksgiving in November. So the turkeys will be big, and you can sell them for thousands of naira and make profit. So this is a practical, small-scale business that we can do. There was a man who went on Instagram. I've not verified it, but he allegedly said that the president gave him up to $210 million. It went viral, and he said, "Ow!" He said the president went to a country, signed an MOU with another country that they would import or export millets, soybeans or things like that. He was the one who showed interest, and he was given that fund. So I believe if we start working, later on the government or donors will also support us. But I am practical and passionate about small-scale agro-business, and I am a doctor and a farmer who can also attest to this.
Okay, so let's all head to the farm now.
Absolutely.
I think that's the message that you're preaching.
And about the mechanized farming, now this is a challenge where the government have to support, because we as individuals, we cannot afford millions. Some of these mechanized farmings are imported from abroad, from the US, from China, from Japan. They are very expensive. So the government has to encourage us, has to subsidize and even remove or provide waivers for this kind of mechanized farm equipment that are coming into the country, primarily for agriculture or agro-business, so that we can grow. Agric is the main thing. Everybody is hungry, and we all have to eat.
All right, I think I have to look for a farm where I'm going to start my own. But thank you so much, doctor turned farmer, Dr.
Love, thank you.
Yusuf Harun, the agri-business entrepreneur in this case, but also a medical doctor.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for your views.
Thank you.
All right, let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll head to the market. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Business Incorporated here on Channels Television. We'll head to the markets now with Aniti Edet. Aniti, the markets are open today. Yeah, I guess it's a very positive start for the third trading week, and then resuming from the Easter break with gains at intraday. So let's talk more about these numbers, the intraday market numbers for most of the markets across the African continent. They resumed from the week-long Easter break, and there you have it. 104,000 points is still being maintained from the last count that we had, which was on Thursday last week. We saw that market number climb back into this level, and then the last track that we had over an hour ago was about more than 0.25% increase for the domestic burst there, 0.30%, and for the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, it is also all of them, it looks as if they had a very, very pleasant Easter break, and then they're starting off the trading week in high spirits. Yeah, there we have it. Yesterday we saw that the last track for the market was 89,000 points, but it has climbed into the 90,000 points, which it had lost about over a month ago. Even it climbed up to about 92,000 points. But that comes in the midst of so many other economic reports, as well as some corporate announcements within the country there. But we're not going to go into details of that. And for the other two markets, so we just have it there that suffice it to say that the markets around the African continent were mostly in mixed terrain. But for the Nairobi Stock Exchange All-Share Index, is still tracking what we had. There's still the last trading numbers that we had as of Thursday last week, which was just about a little over 0.5% in the red. And for the EGX 30, we see a pullback there at intraday, but these numbers surely will change before the close of transactions for Tuesday's trading session. And of course, we also look out for how Nigeria's stock market, which has been down for about minus 3.3% month to date, and a plus
1.3%, all the way from 4% that we saw within the very first few months. As at February, we saw the market climb to about 4%, but that has receded to just about 1.3% year to date. Okay, so now let's talk deeper about the domestic stock market. And we have with us here Abiodun Adedotun, equity trader with First Securities Brokers, to give us the details about the latest developments as well as other issues within the market. Thank you for joining us, Abiodun.
You're welcome, Victor. Good to be here again.
Yeah, so welcome back from that long Easter break, and it's time to make some money and get back to work. So now let's start first. I want to ask you, we've seen that oil prices at some point, it had dropped to about 60, 64, 65, but then it has climbed up to about $70 per barrel. That's for the Brent, the benchmark crude, and that's one of Nigeria's mainstay in terms of revenue generation. So far, how has this impacted on the sectors, the oil and gas sector of the NGX? How are investment sentiments in there?
Yeah, of course. Nigeria's GDP economy is measured based on what the oil is doing, because it's a major source of revenue for the government. And there's been a lot of apprehension, especially for the FPIs, foreign portfolio investors, about these oil levels and how sustainable it is, for Nigeria to continue to meet its FX obligation. Of course, you know that the CBN is making frantic efforts in trying to stabilize the FX regime, and we can see the impact on the external reserves. So only time will tell how long it's going to be, as long as the external reserve continues to remain pressured with CBN's course of action of defending the local currency with the US.
Okay, so now, before now, we saw that the market has been continuously going down at some point, even the benchmark all share index, which is the indicator of stock market performance. So how has the market capitalization level, how has it changed, within the last couple of weeks? And is there any reason to be fearful on the side of investors?
And not so much to be fearful, The thing there is that we still have few participation of oil, foreign investors here and there. And of course, we know the reasons why the Nigerian market fell, not just the Nigerian market. Global markets have been in more of a tumultuous state because of the tariff hike by President Donald Trump of the US. The impact of this, of course, it's going to affect businesses, not just in America, not just in Europe, of course, Nigeria. Some of these are going to, it means some businesses will struggle, to be able to access the US market. So, but you don't expect it to be so much, sustained. I think if the tariffs don't return after the 90-day ultimatum, we'll fare well, because the locals have been dominating the Nigerian market space for a while. And I think it's going to continue to remain like that in the near future.
Okay, so now, with that being said, which of the sectors, I don't want to be stock specific, which of the sectors would you consider as being a safe haven? Because right now, in the fixed income market, they say, yes, there's a flight to safety by investors. But for the stock market, which of the sectors would you consider as a safe haven sector for most of the stocks for investors?
Safe haven might just be relative, because what we are seeing right now, it's most likely going to be temporal. If FX level remains around where it is or gets a little bit better, you tend to look at reversals in some consumer goods that are taking a bit of a hit. We have the Nigerian breweries looking like they are coming out of the water. You have Nestle that went underwater last year as well. We had MTN that suffered so much, if things stabilizes, these stocks and these companies are likely to do a lot better.
Okay, so now let's have a final question with you. So now that the market has opened, and that last track I had was in the green, so give us the current trading levels of the market and what you expect for the close of Tuesday's trading session.
The market is currently trading at 43 basis points higher, and of course it's due to the banks recovering. Especially the tier ones, they announced, and there were a bit of markdown for dividend just before the holiday commenced. So it's more like, okay, investors are beginning to take, okay, the dividend is gone. Everyone is expecting what Q1 numbers is going to look like. And I think the market is really a little bit upbeat. More importantly, Nigerian breweries have announced its results, and of course it's gotten back into profitability. Investors are excited to hear about this because we know 2024 was not so much of a good year because of what happened in FX in Nigeria. So there's so much excitement going on around the stock right now. And there might be a read across, to other companies that suffer the same fate.
And I remember that once upon a time, Nigerian Breweries was the most capitalized stock on the NGX. That was over almost about a decade ago, if not more. But we keep eyes on that stock as well as some other stocks on the NGX. Thank you so much for your time on the show.
You're welcome.
That was Abiodun Adedotun, equity trader with First Securities Brokers, formerly known as FBN Quest. Okay, so from Africa to the Middle East, and we see that the Middle Eastern stock markets mostly positive there. We saw only the Abu Dhabi index is in the red at intraday, down by 0.22%, while there's other brother there, the Dubai index, which both of them, like we always mention, on the United Arab Emirates, for those who do not know, was in the green. I think that was kind of a fast finger there. We were still talking about the Dubai. First, we have it at the Dubai. We were talking about the Dubai real estate, but the latest numbers or the latest report that we have here is that the Dubai real estate market, it grew by 23% in the first quarter of this year, and this is according to latest report by Better Homes, which shows that the growth trajectory has been maintained in the first quarter, recording about some significant increases in both transaction volumes as well as the values. So that is one of the reasons why this market has been in the green. So now let's flip over to the other side of the markets. Saudi Arabia and Qatari Stock Exchange indexes in the green there, if you can have that number out there. And talking about this, Saudi Arabia's Aramco, one of its subsidiaries has partnered with electric vehicle maker, Chinese electric vehicle maker BYD, to develop new energy vehicles technologies. So that is expected to develop innovations that improve efficiency and environmental performance. So we see that also reflecting on the Tadawul, which is the Saudi Arabia's stock market index. And the Qatari Stock Exchange, we also see that it's up by 0.32%. So still talking about Saudi Arabia here, we have it that PepsiCo, which is one of the beverage makers, is to open a research and development factory in Saudi Arabia there. This is as it's also increasing its investment in that country to about $2.4 billion. So talking about some companies making money from one country into the other. So we see that partnership coming out in the green in the midst of the tariff and trade turmoil currently going around the world. Okay, so now let's go to the world's #1 economy, that's US. We see the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P 500, as well as the NASDAQ tech heavies up in the green. This is coming after overnight the markets were very much in the red. It fell following US President Donald Trump's attacks on the Fed chair. This is coming up more like for the third time that he's calling him all sorts of names. That he's Mr. Too Late, as well as a major loser. So the markets reacted. Most of the markets reacted in the red. They weren't too comfortable with that because whatever happens to the world's #1 central bank, the governor there, it has its own ripple effect on the market. So, but the market is trying to come out from the blues, come out of the woods that we saw on Monday into the opening bell, which is 2:30 Nigerian time. So look out for that, the opening numbers, which is expected to commence just about some few just about less than an hour from now. Okay, so now from the US we go over to the Asian markets. We see, well, most of the markets were in the red for the close of Tuesday's trading session. And like we mentioned, that comment from US President Donald Trump on the Fed chair had an impact on the markets. We see across the Nikkei, the South Korea's Kospi, but for the Hang Seng, that's for Hong Kong, it was up by 0.78%, but the other two here were in the red. But this is also coming at the same time where we see that the Japanese yen, which has appreciated by 10% against the US dollar, gone past the psychological level of 140 against the US dollar. And this is coming on the back of negotiations between Japan and the US about issues regarding to tariffs, as well as some other issues within the market. But also we see here for the other two markets within the Asian region, the Shanghai and the Nifty 50, that's for India and for China, in the green. Talk about India. Yesterday we told you that US Vice President Vance is India for a 4-day visit, mostly personal, with the second lady, who is an Indian by descent. So he and the family are in there, and they're talking about global issues of mutual understanding and also calling for dialogue and diplomacy. Let's not forget that India was hit with a 26% reciprocal tariff on April the 2nd by the Trump administration, but that also was suspended. That's due to that 90 days suspension by US President Donald Trump for just to delay the takeoff of that tariff. But so far we see India's stock market in the green, as well as Shanghai stock market, that's Chinese stock market, in the green. So that's a wrap for the markets for Asia. And then we look out for how Nigeria's stock market ends the trading session.
All right, Anisi, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Let's head to Europe now, where the eyes of Auto World are on Shanghai, where the world's largest auto trade show is what's happening there. Among the exhibitors is Germany's Volkswagen, and Lars joins us now to tell us what we can expect in this time. Lars, good to have you. Volkswagen is back in the news. I wonder what magic they have for the Shanghai exhibit.
Yes, Inia, hi, how you doing? It's good to be with you again. It's interesting what we're seeing there in Shanghai, specifically from Volkswagen, because the new models that the German car maker is showing, they don't actually come from Germany at all, and that is a new thing. There's literally nothing out of Wolfsburg anymore in those cars. Wolfsburg, in the German state of Lower Saxony, is the worldwide headquarters of the company, and every model that company ever made from the old Beetle on was conceived there, even those specifically made for foreign markets. But not anymore. These latest models presented in Shanghai now are built on an entirely new platform, Ini. It's called CSP, or China Scalable Platform. The cars were entirely thought up, developed, and assembled in China. So what they're showing there is essentially cars made by a German company, but they're not German cars. And the reason for this, China has, of course, long been Volkswagen's biggest market, but it's been in decline as customers there have switched to Chinese-made cars. And that is because Chinese customers have a different philosophy about cars. Software and connectivity, for example, are much more important there than they are in Europe. Even social media plays into it. So Volkswagen needed to adapt. Also, by the way, lead times are so much shorter in China. Developing a new platform there for a new series of cars takes about 30 months compared to 50 months in Germany. Those numbers according to Volkswagen. And that's for the 50 months here, barring any delays that can way extend that time frame. Just look at the latest platform developed here, the Scalable Systems Platform, or SSP, that Volkswagen would like to put its new models on for the European and the US markets. Now, that platform was supposed to come out in 26. It's just been delayed to 29.
So, Lars, I mean, having this kind of close relationship, working relationship with China at a time like this, I hope President Trump is not hearing about this, but does Volkswagen plan to come out with entirely Chinese-made cars?
Well, it's unlikely that they're selling them anywhere other than in China. Now, some details out of these China-made cars might find their way into other markets, including even Europe, of course. That could be that new range extender that they have. That's a mini combustion engine that can charge a battery while the car is driving. And, of course, you know, extend the range of a car. That's what it essentially is. But as for these Chinese-made models in general, there are two problems there that might make it very hard to get them, for example, into German markets. First of all, there's this whole issue of trade tariffs and subsidies. Just earlier this month, actually, Germany and Chinese automakers have agreed on minimum prices for Chinese cars sold here. Well, that's a step not quite as harsh as high import tariffs, but it was necessary for producers here as the Chinese government pays subsidies to their firms, allowing them to undercut prices in a foreign market. And then there's the trust factor. Chinese software is not really something most German drivers would want in their cars. There's always a suspicion of government spying, of data breaches. So all in all, it looks like all the models Volkswagen is going to sell here will still come from Wolfsburg for a long time to come.
All right, let's see how this is affecting the markets in Europe.
Well, I think this particular story does not do much to the markets right now because, Ini, as so often in the past, there is mostly one focus that the market has, and that, of course, is towards the U.S. And you just had it there in your report just a few minutes ago, how Trump's latest comments here with regards to Fed Chief Jerome Powell have rattled the markets once again. U.S., of course, dropped yesterday. We just saw in your reporting here that they are doing better today. But of course, we here in Europe, we had that long Easter weekend. We didn't trade yesterday, so we are feeling this in the markets. Today, the DAX in Frankfurt is currently down by about 0.5%. Now, that's not drastic. We will be getting lots of news this week, and this is where this dynamic might change a bit, and we're not just looking towards the United States for guidance. We will head right into earnings season. Now, the first DAX-listed company on the docket here is SAP. They are opening their books today, but it will be after markets close, so we will see what the market makes of these numbers tomorrow. We'll also get Tesla numbers today after close as well, and I'm pretty sure we'll be having a very close look, not just at their profit and revenue numbers, but especially their sales in Europe.
Yeah, because we heard earlier today how the share price plunged. Talking about Tesla, even before the release of that results, it doesn't look like Elon Musk is having it easy also while he's supporting the administration of President Trump.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little more, Ini, tomorrow.
All right, thank you so much. Talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you. See you then.
All right, now let's come to Africa, where two of South Africa's major political parties, the Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters, have taken legal action to halt the proposed VAT increase as a value-added tax that's set for the first day of May 2025. The matter is being heard in the Western Cape High Court today. The timing of the high coincides with Workers' Day and has added fuel to the debate. As anticipated by experts, parts of the 2025 budget are now facing legal challenges. And the DEA and EFF argue that the VAT increase is unlawful and will place additional strain on the economy, particularly on vulnerable South African households that are reliant on grants.
We stand here at the High Court in Cape Town and we say no more taxes on the poor, the working class, and even the middle class. That is a regressive tax. It is more pain onto the people, the poor, and the working class in South Africa. A VAT increase is a clear sign that the ANC is a government that does not care for South Africans. A VAT increase is a sign that we have a government that is out of touch with the people.
Now, colleagues, today's fight is very simple and clear, one that resonates with all South Africans. Nobody has money to pay more for food. Nobody has money to pay more for baby formula, for school shoes and basic living. And our fight today in this court that will be heard is one that says we want an urgent interdict as a matter of urgency against a VAT hike.
Libya's dinar has plunged to record lows, driven by a sharp decline in oil revenues and escalating political unrest. The Central Bank of Libya devalued the currency by 13.3%, setting the official rate at 5.56 dinars per US dollar as the first of such moves since 2020. However, the black market rate has soared to over 7.2 dinars per dollar, reflecting deepening economic instability. Meanwhile, political factions in Eastern Europe have shut down major oil fields in protest over dispute at the central bank, further curtailing oil exports. And still with the central bank in Libya, they've authorized exchange companies and offices licensed by the banks to sell foreign currency at 7% profit margin over the central bank's selling price to banks operating in the country. The central bank warned that exchange companies will be subject to continuous and periodic monitoring through field inspections to assess their compliance with the central bank's instructions. The central bank notes that it will take legal action and impose penalties stipulated by law, including revocation of the license granted to violating company or offices. Senegalese authorities have officially launched the Going Digital project in Dakar, a collaborative initiative with the German corporation Gears and Expertise France. This significant program, funded by 13.1 million euros from the European Union, Germany and France, aims to advance public reforms and private initiatives, driving the country towards a more connected and inclusive digital society. The Going Digital project is aligned with Senegal's national strategy vision, and that's Senegal 2050, which envisions building an inclusive and efficient digital society as the country experiences accelerated transformation. The project aims to promote digital inclusive, particularly for marginalized groups such as women and youth, facilitating their participation in the digital economy. Government in Zimbabwe have repealed exchange rate control and is set to speed up the demise of Zimbabwe gold, that's the ZiG currency, just a year after its introduction. The move by the finance minister is the latest of several contradictory policy decisions by officials who've been attempting to keep afloat the Zimbabwe gold. The Zimbabwe African National Union Patriot Front, ZANU-PF, and government's sixth attempt to launch a viable currency since 2009. In March, the governor of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe announced that companies were free to use whatever exchange rates they preferred, only to drop the policy days later. Now the government has pivoted back to a floating system. The ZiG has lost around 50% of its value since being launched a year ago at a rate of 13.56 against the US dollar. Let's head to the crypto space now and see what's happening. When we look at the number, it does look encouraging this afternoon. Building on where we were yesterday, it's now at $88,777 for Bitcoin, gained about more than 2% in 24 hours. Ethereum is also looking good, 1,006. XRP has dropped, but I mean, it seems there's a bit of recovery, sustained recovery, but I wonder if this should be called sustained recovery at all. We have Chimezie Chuta, Chairman, National Blockchain Policy Steering Committee, joining us for this conversation. Hi, Chimezie. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's always a pleasure joining you.
Great. So do you see this as a sustained recovery?
Well, sustained, well, no, I don't think so, but it has been really an exciting weekend for crypto, where we have the president of the World Economic Forum that resigned, and also we got a new chair of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. So these are naturally bullish trends that is supposed to steer all the market in the positive direction. But whether or not it's going to be a sustained one is something that we need to see in the coming weeks or months, for that matter.
What are the possible movers, reversal or forward movement that you see, you know, in all that's happening? I mean, we're still awaiting the 90-day. I guess the impact of President Trump's threats on Jerome Powell, I don't know if that's still in there, you know, but when you look at the scenario, the reality globally, what are the possible movers of price at this time?
Well, first of all, the tariff war has not rested yet. So as long as that has not been put to rest, we expect that once the tariff wars resume again, we'll see price volatility once more. But again, you have to understand that the fact that we have a new SEC chair and he is someone that is favorably disposed towards Bitcoin and crypto, we expect that there will be a whole lot of improvements in the way the Securities and Exchange Commission US view crypto and classify them clearly. So that on its own has the potential to rally the market on the positive side. And of course, we're expecting the rate drops to come in very soon also. That could also be a bullish indicator for me. But then the market is still very, very undecided on the long term of what we expect to see.
Sorry, Chimeze, when you say the rate drop, are you expecting the Reserve Bank, the Federal Reserve, to cut rates following, you know, the threat on Jerome Powell? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm referring to, because it looks like they have set the grounds for him to be able to make that decision by himself. But again, there is this tendency for the Federal Reserve to continue to see itself as independent of the political arm of government. In other words, investors don't want a Federal Reserve chair or a Federal Reserve that is swinging to the whims and caprices of politicians. Okay, so it's a very difficult situation for him, but then we'll see what he will decide in the next couple of weeks.
Interesting. And coming here back home, what is sentiment? I know the ISA has been signed, and, you know, a lot of people trust Dr. Agama and all of that. But what's the sentiment, and how are Nigerian crypto investors hedging at this time?
Okay, so I think to be fair to the Securities and Exchange Commission Nigeria, I think they have done the right thing. I mean, for years we've been clamoring for such clarity, and thankfully it has been done. The Investment and Security Act that was just passed recently and signed by the president shows a good intention for the crypto industry. So for now, I'm anticipating a strong institutional interest in virtual assets as far as Nigeria is concerned. We want to see the Dangote Group, we want to see the banks, we want to see manufacturing industries set aside a certain amount of their reserve asset to be in virtual asset, because you know, when you follow the money and you look at forward-thinking countries like US, like France, like China, or even Russia, and how they value virtual assets, you expect that our own investors and corporate organizations in Nigeria will have something that they can also copy at this time. Because the world is not in any way standing still and watching from one direction. Everybody wants to make sure that wherever the pendulum swings in terms of long-lasting investment, then you would have found yourself on the right side of things.
All right. We hope Dangote and the other big investors are listening, and we'll see what direction they take. Thank you so much, Chimeze Chuta, Chairman, National Blockchain Policy Steering Committee. All right, so that's it on the program. Thank you so much for being a part of Business Incorporated. And we have another episode, fresh one, coming your way tomorrow. God's Great, beginning with 10 a.m. when there'll be Business Morning, and then 1 p.m. we'll have Business Incorporated. But tonight, you'll see me during the news at 10 because the market is operational today. So I'll give you how the market closed. That's Nigeria's stock market. And hopefully we'll sustain that green color. I'm in John Mekwa. See you later.